For decades, the Republican Party has championed the unborn. And while the 2024 GOP platform is discouraging, it does not end, even as we just were talking about with our previous guest, it does not end the effort that we all must continue as it relates to standing for a culture of life. Advancing, on the other hand, a temporary political objective that cannot be a license to compromise biblical truth. And no one has been more clear in that statement, in that proclamation, than our next guest, which of course is the president of Family Research Council, Tony Perkins. Tony, thanks so much for dropping by. We appreciate it.
All right, Jody, good to see you. Thanks for filling in for me again today.
Well, you've had a few things on your plate. I know that. So, all right, listen, we've had the platform now has, it's been voted on. It is what it is. People are beginning to read it, seeing what's in it. What kind of reaction are you seeing from people now?
Well, I think as more people read it, they see it for what it is. It's not a bad document. It's kind of cotton candy. It's not rat poison, but it's cotton candy. You know, it's not the substance that we're accustomed to that lays out these enduring principles that movements are built upon. It does lack, as we talked about yesterday, clarity on the issue of life. It is a step back, and I don't like spin, okay? I just don't like spin. It is a step backwards. It doesn't move us closer to recognizing that all human life, which is created in the image of God, is to be welcomed into our world and protected under our laws. It falls short of that, and it moves it further away. That said, Jody, no victory this side of heaven is permanent, nor is any defeat permanent. And so we keep going. You know, when I entered in this, this is what brought me into the political movement. I was a police officer. That's what I would have stayed at. But the life issue made me have to make a choice. And I've realized that we're not Minutemen, like the Minutemen from the Revolution. This might be a history lesson here. You know, that they would respond, they would drop their pitchforks, and they would grab their rifles, and they would run to the battle, and then they would go back home, and they would pick up their pitchforks. You know, I always thought, well, we just kind of respond and we take a pro-life stand, and then it's over and we go back to our life as it was before. This is our life. This is what Ephesians chapter 6 talks about the battle that we're in and that we have to continue to stand. So the battle is never done this side of heaven. We have to continue to perpetually stand for the truth, knowing that there's going to be good days and there's going to be some days like yesterday, bad days. But you know what? God sits on his throne and he laughs at the nations who rage against him and say that they can do it their way. God's truth is enduring. That's where we should stand, and that's where we should move our communities, our country, and if we're engaged in a political party, toward that truth.
Well, I think that's extremely well said, and it hits it right on the head. And we have to give hope that the battle continues, but we also need to provide direction, that we keep on doing what's right. This is not a battle against any candidate or any party per se. This is a stand for truth, for biblical truth, something that we have done for decades and something that now we must continue.
Yeah. You know, when I've had 5 kids and I was a kid, believe it or not, one time. And, you know, when you're in the kitchen, you touch a hot stove or you touch something that's hot, and you know what? You realize, I don't want to do that again. Well, I think this has to be one of those hot moments for the RNC where they realize, and I know Tamara was just talking to, Tamara's a great lady and enjoyed working with her. This is not the 168. It's kind of confusing when you throw all these things around, Republican convention, RNC, GOP, all this stuff. Well, there's the chairman of the RNC, Michael Whatley, selected by the campaign to basically be the leader of the party for now. So he's kind of the one figurehead that you can identify, and he's taking his marching orders basically from the campaign. I think they need to know that this is not acceptable. Because if not, we'll see this repeated in 4 years, and we can't have that.
Well, and it's always hard to get the genie back in the bottle when it's out. And when you take away so many of these life protections 4 years from now, when we
That's
have a
the
different
problem. I mean,
candidate,
it took us 45 years to get to where we were.
Yeah.
And so to see a retreat in one day and not even have debate on it, it was insulting. It was wrong, and it cannot be tolerated. So we're encouraging people to basically technically sign on to, or not technically, but just kind of support the minority report that was submitted by 21 of us to the RNC. You can actually sign it as a kind of a petition to the RNC chairman. You can just text the word report, R-E-P-O-R-T, report, to 67742, 67742, report. You'll get a link, sign that. And we want to inundate Chairman Whatley with this support of this minority report, saying we will not tolerate the party moving away from the issue of life.
Do you know, and we've got less than a minute, but if you can, let's stick around. I want to continue this conversation.
Yeah, I paid for this microphone. I'm going to stay.
Okay, it's all both of them are your microphones for that hour. But have we heard it all from the campaign?
I've had some surrogates, if you will, reach out and have conversations. I've been on the phone nonstop talking about it. And I do want to talk about when we come back from the break. Where do we go from here? I think we have to go with eyes wide open. We still have a clear contrast between the two parties, but it doesn't mean we have to be silent. Okay, we can continue to do our work, pray, vote, and stand. Part of that standing is speaking.
All right, you were saying before we went out, and give one more time where people can go.
Yeah. So what we want to communicate very clearly, and this is where you can help. And I know literally thousands weighed in before the platform committee trying to help build that momentum. Completely steamrolled the way the process worked. And okay, it is what it is.
Right.
So what do we do from now? What do we do from here? So we have a minority report that 21 of us submitted to the convention, despite the fact that they would not answer my parliamentary inquiry as to how to do it. So we submitted it anyway. It's been submitted to the chairman of the RNC. And so what we're encouraging people to do, Jody, is go to, or just simply text the word report to 67742. That's report to 67742, and you'll get a link, and you can sign your signature onto that report, calling upon the chairman to lead the party into embracing life, which is what the minority report focuses primarily on. There were other issues, but that was, to use the old adage, the straw that broke the camel's back, because that was 40 plus years in the making, and to walk away from that in one platform is unacceptable.
Absolutely. All right, so you can text the word report to 67742. You can also find a link at the website, tonyperkins.com. So either of those places, we encourage you to go sign up for this. Our voices need to be heard right now. This is a major issue that's taking place within the GOP, and
yeah, I would literally ask you to do that, because
absolutely.
It's a difficult process. We went through it, not for ourselves, not even for FRC, not for even my constituents in Louisiana that elected me, but for the movement, for life, for the unborn. And so weigh in and help us send that message that this is unacceptable.
Thank you for your lead on this.
Well, let's talk now about what do we do next? Okay, so we communicate this, that it's not acceptable, we don't like it, but we're still going to register people to vote. We're still going to vote because there's a clear contrast between the parties. Now, that said, Jody, I want to be clear, and Tamara made this reference. She said that this, and you talked about this with Tamara, about this being more of a campaign platform, which it's not a bad campaign platform. It's just not the enduring principles that a party is guided by.
Which doesn't attract voters.
No,
I mean,
well, it doesn't. There's no aspirational goals in here. There's
right.
nothing to say where you're going to go and what you're about.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is the approach that the RNC is taking, then quite frankly, I don't think we should be supporting the RNC with our finances. Now, let me be very, very clear here. We need to be voting. and we need to vote for candidates who most clearly align with biblical truth. There's very few opportunities we get that those are perfectly aligned, although there's more and more getting into the process. But you have to use discernment. We have voter guides. We'll be putting voter guides out on all of the elections this fall. And so we need to vote in alignment as nearly as possible with those biblical truths. But the next step is, where do we give our time and money? I believe we should give our time and money to those candidates and those entities that are clearly supporting biblical truth and willing to fight for that biblical truth. And so I've done this in the past, and they did a course correction, and so I removed my objections. But I would say you should not give any money to the RNC. You should direct your money to either directly to the candidates that you know, or to entities like, you're the president of FRC Action now, and we've got the Faith, Family, and Freedom Fund.
That's right.
And we clearly vet these candidates to make sure they're in alignment with biblical truth and support these positions of life, marriage, family, religious freedom. And so I would encourage you folks to direct your money to the Faith, Family, and Freedom Fund or directly to candidates.
Listen, I couldn't agree with you more.
And how can I get to the fund?
You can go to frcaction.org, or you can go to faithfamilyfreedomfund.org. And by the way, that is a super PAC, able to receive unlimited contributions from both individuals and corporations. And listen, this does, Tony, as you said, it allows us to directly engage in the political process without going through all these big, massive organizations that
and supporting things that you
supporting
don't agree
things
with.
that we don't support,
Right.
and that's kind of what we're facing right now in so many
let
ways.
me again be very, very clear.
Vote.
Folks, we have to vote, and we have to have discernment, and we have to understand we're not going to have perfect alignment. And so, yes, we're disappointed in this temporary step back. We're not going to say that it's permanent, because we're going to continue to push, and you're going to help us do that. But we're going to vote, and because we're going to have a clear contrast this fall.
And the contrast is already clear.
Yeah.
We have a bump in the road right now within our own party. Okay, we'll deal with those kinds of things. We have an alternative where people can support and give to be more aligned with their biblical principles and so forth. But as you've said 1,000 times, it's pray, vote, stand.
Right.
And
staying home, folks, is not an option.
It's not an option.
I mean, there is not voting is a vote for the worst possible outcome.
Yeah.
And so we have to be informed and engaged, even when we're not completely happy with what we're dealing with.
But let me kind of circle back with this. I mean, we have talked about this whole platform issue from the perspective of the policy. This is a policy standpoint that is weak at best. But beyond that, I mean, this has a watered down platform such as this has political ramifications too. While we're talking about praying and voting and standing, there are political consequences. I mean, this kind of makes people scratch their head and wonder, what's happening to my party?
No question about it. And this is why for weeks I had conversations and meetings warning that this would have that effect. And I mean, there's no denying that it will have some effect, even though we're going to encourage people to continue to be engaged. But, when you have a party that backs away from what brought you into the Republican Party, I mean, I'm an example of this, Jody.
Right.
As I mentioned earlier, I was a police officer, and my police career ended because I took a stand over Operation Rescue coming to town and the excessive use of force by the department I was with. I spoke out publicly, and it ended in me leaving the department involuntarily. And so that's what launched me into the political arena as standing for the unborn. So, I mean, this is not something new to me. This is something that a lot of people, in fact, a lot of people at FRC, they came to Washington, they came to this entity over the sanctity of human life. Because we understand it's not just a political policy issue, it's a spiritual issue. That's what I recall in the summer of 1992, the evidence, the manifestation of this spiritual battle that this issue was about. I just thought it was just, just an issue, and I'm a Christian, so I'm pro-life. It wasn't until that summer that I realized that this is the central issue over the battle for truth and for life and for the understanding that God is the creator of life. And when we deny that, and when you look back in the Old Testament, you see the judgment that came upon the nation of Israel when they shed innocent blood. And that was the shedding of the blood of children. And America cannot be blessed
Absolutely.
if we
Continue.
tolerate or embrace this. And so is it still continuing? Yes, it's continuing. But as long as we're fighting it, I believe God's mercy remains, because we're not content with it. We're not satisfied in saying, you know what, it's not my problem. We're making it our problem because it's God's problem. What offends God should offend us. And the killing of unborn children offends God. His word makes that very clear. And those things should bother us, and to the point that it causes us to make a difference.
Absolutely. Well, if I can, Tony, I'd like to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit for our viewers and our listeners right now, and give a little bit of, if I can say, behind the scenes look at FRC. Yesterday was a long, long day. It was a disappointing day. After months of preparation and battle, it all went down as we have been discussing. Last night, we gathered as a group, FRC Action, and the media team, those of us here in Milwaukee, and we had a powwow. And in that powwow, which you led, you said two things that really stuck out to me, and I think our viewers and listeners need to hear. First, you said something to the effect that we will never sacrifice biblical principles for the sake of political advancement. Biblical principles we will stand for, period. And if our party goes away from that, then we are going to stand on the scripture. We're not following the party. Second thing on that issue, the second thing you said is this is a time where people need hope and they need direction. And in essence, you said we are going to stand in the gap in that regard as well. If you could expound a little bit more, perhaps in going further than what I've just said with that, I think this gives a heart of FRC, it gives a heart of you and the leadership that you provide us, but it also gives our audience right now something to hang on to as well as they're wrestling through all of this. If you would take those two thoughts a little further.
Sure, Jody, but I would also add that we spent time in prayer.
Yes, that's how we ended.
That's how we
we do
ended.
so many of our meetings.
So we ended our night in prayer. So when we talk about pray, vote, stand, that's not.
We do it.
Yeah, we do it. We model that. When we talk about the Word, we're in the Word. It's our source of strength as an organization, as individuals. So what we say, we model, what we do. And so I think that's the key to integrity as an organization, and in the leadership of the organization. It's what we do, because if we can't expect the organization to do something we're not doing. But we have to make a decision as to whether or not we're going to walk in God's way, according to His Word, regardless of where the culture may be, the times in which we're living. You know, Jesus said, deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. And that's the cost of discipleship, is to basically you die, you just die to self.
Right.
So, you can't kill a dead man. You can't mock, you can't cancel a dead man. And so we just have to die to self and follow Christ. And, I have found in the 35 years I've been down this path that the Christian life is the most exciting life to live, because it really is an adventure. And we get to see God work in so many miraculous ways. And four of the guiding values here at the Family Research Council for us is truth. We're going to speak the truth. We're going to proclaim the truth. We're going to hold ourselves accountable to the truth. But secondly is hope. And because Peter wrote that, be prepared to speak of the hope that's within you. We have a hope that transcends the current difficulty and challenges. It's our relationship with Jesus Christ. When we enter into a relationship with Christ, accepting him as our Savior and Lord, confessing him as our Savior and Lord, our security is set for eternity. That gives us a purpose. We now live for something bigger than ourselves. And so from that, we gain hope, even in the midst of difficulties. And then we want to have courage. That's our third guiding trait, is it takes courage. I saw that yesterday. There were so many who were afraid to speak. They were taking pictures of people who voted against the RNC of the campaign position to intimidate them, and many were intimidated. We would have probably had 50 people sign the minority report, but they were afraid. And I talked to them. They said, I just can't, they might come after me, or they might come after you. You live in America, you're an adult. I have one pet peeve. I cannot stand cowardice. I just cannot stand that. I mean, if we fear God, we have no reason to fear anything else.
That's right.
Because he will provide, and he has, and he will. Doesn't mean we won't have difficulties, but it means that he will see us
And to
through.
fear God eliminates fear of man.
That's right. You don't have to, that's why COVID was so revealing. When people were fearful of the virus, fearful of government, fearful of this, it tells me they weren't fearful of God.
Right.
Didn't have that reverence for God. Doesn't mean you're careless, doesn't mean you're reckless. But look, we do not need to fear when we're walking in obedience and in fellowship to God. So there is a hope. There's always a hope, as long as the sun is rising. But God has entrusted us with this moment. And I think he's entrusted us with this moment to be faithful to the truth, to proclaim that truth, even when it is politically inexpedient. When it doesn't, it's rarely do they roll out a red carpet for the truth. But that doesn't mean we're not supposed to speak it. We're to continue to speak that truth, and we will at the Family Research Council, knowing that God will be honored, and when he is honored, his blessings come with it. Will we turn this country around? I certainly hope so. That's what we're working to do. But if we don't, well, that's upon God. The results belong to him. The duty to obey is ours.
And I think that's a great message to leave today, that we have the understanding that it is our role to stand for truth and to do so lovingly, but to stand with pure hands, clean hands and pure heart, to stand. Leave the results to God.
Right.
He's going to have the final word in all of this. Tony, I can't thank you enough. I know you've got so many plates spinning in your world, and even here in Milwaukee, so much going on, and it means a great deal that you take time to drop by.
Well, thank you for filling in. Folks, text report to 67742 and join us in Speaking Out for Life.
And check out faithfamilyfreedom.org as well.